Hello, and welcome to our lesson on crisis management. This segment will cover crisis management background. Crisis management. Historically, crisis management systems operated under the assumption that crises were rare occurrences with low probability. In the contemporary landscape, organizations perceive uncertainty and crisis in a distinctive light, making themselves ready to confront the crisis and adopting a long-term recovery perspective. This new perspective is enabling organizations to enhance their readiness to confront future adverse events, and consequently, a crisis can serve as a transformative stepping stone, paving the way for opportunities to engage in beneficial innovation. Defining crisis. The term crisis encompasses unpredictability, events that unfold with little or no warning, challenging traditional foresight; unwelcome uncertainty, situations marked by ambiguity, making it difficult to predict outcomes; disbelief, events that trigger shock, making it challenging to comprehend or accept. It refers to an unexpected singular event, a sudden and often rare occurrence that deviates significantly from the expected, posing a threat to an organization's goals or its survival. Events with the potential to undermine the fundamental objectives or existence of an organization. Inadequately handling a crisis can result in financial losses, adversely impacting the economic stability and prosperity of the organization; damage to reputation, harming the perceived trustworthiness, credibility, and standing in the eyes of stakeholders; compromises to public safety, endangering the well-being and security of the broader community. A situation can only be deemed a crisis if those involved and affected perceive it as such. 3 distinct types of crisis were identified, each with different time horizons. The first is an immediate crisis, the second is an emerging crisis that gradually unfolds, and the third is a sustained crisis, lasting over an extended period. An organizational crisis is an infrequent but highly impactful occurrence that critical stakeholders perceive as a threat to the organization's viability. The ambiguity surrounding the causes, effects, and potential resolutions of the organizational crisis can result in disillusionment or the loss of psychic and shared meaning. Additionally, it may lead to the fragmentation of commonly held beliefs, values, and individuals' fundamental assumptions. In the midst of the crisis, decision-making is constrained by perceived time limitations and influenced by cognitive constraints. In recent times, the concept of crisis has evolved to encompass high-risk situations, significant threats to operations that can have negative consequences if not handled properly, and events perceived by managers and stakeholders as highly salient, unexpected, and disruptive. Traditional view on crisis. Traditional view outlines a systematic and rational crisis management approach, portraying it as a proactive process designed to navigate various stages at either a micro or macro level. At the micro level, a growing organization undergoes 5 distinct stages, with a crisis occurring at each stage. The fundamental insight is that crises are foreseeable. Understanding the current organizational stage is crucial in order to have the ability to predict an impending crisis and prepare accordingly. This implies that factors such as an organization's size or age influence the crisis management activities that should be undertaken. For example, a newly established organization resides in the creativity stage, characterized by informal communication and an entrepreneurial spirit. However, as organizational size and managerial complexity grow, managing through informality and inefficiency becomes untenable. This led to the leadership crisis, prompting the organization to undergo a transformation to secure a strong business manager accepted by the original founders. Subsequently, the organization enters the direction stage, followed by the autonomy crisis. This cyclical process continues, with each stage escalating in complexity and necessitating organizational innovation and adaptive managerial practices to ensure sustained survival. Crisis should be seen as processes with incubation periods, critical episodes, and difficult aftermaths. These will henceforth be referred to as the pre-crisis, mid-crisis, and post-crisis stages. Then, Specific management activities are allocated to deal with the distinguishing characteristics of each stage. These stages make out the following headlines. The pre-crisis stage is deemed the optimal phase for averting crisis entirely. Within this stage, there are 4 key areas. Firstly, the perception of managers and executives, along with their organizational experience of crisis, lays the crucial groundwork for an effective crisis management system. Secondly, crisis signal detection is highlighted as a key component. Thirdly, the focus is on prevention and contingency plans. Lastly, the simulations, scenario exercises, and employee training are very important. The executive demonstration of disregard or concern for risk significantly influences the development of crisis management programs. Top management forms the foundation for preparatory activities, and the nature of these activities hinges on the beliefs and values of the executives. The organization is likely to prepare for crisis that executives perceive as threatening core technologies and operational areas, potentially neglecting non-essential areas. The plans are usually constructed based on existing organizational structures and draw from past experiences of crisis or similar incidents in the industry. Signal scouting, the next foundational aspect in the pre-crisis stage of traditional crisis management, involves examining cues and signs of an impending crisis. It is recommended that organizations develop systems and mechanisms to detect crisis signals, address underlying causes, and undertake preparatory activities or organizational changes accordingly. Effective traditional crisis management aims not only to predict a crisis, but also to minimize the risk before its occurrence. Plans should be designed not only based on the anticipated type of crisis, but also tailored to organizational characteristics. Sharing these plans with external stakeholders, building alliances, and facilitating coordination are also recommended, preferably years in advance of the crisis. However, caution is advised against the misconception that the creation of elaborate contingency plans alone is sufficient for effective crisis management. As crises seldom unfold exactly as anticipated, the ultimate purpose of planning should be to envision the unthinkable in advance. Advancing to the mid-crisis stage is an undesirable outcome in traditional crisis management, signifying that preventative actions have not entirely averted the crisis. However, if the organization has undertaken sufficient preparatory activities, a series of contingency plans are in place to guide the implementation of responses. The plans need to be promptly assessed, selected, put into effect, and monitored. Within the intra-organizational dimension, decision-making occurs at 3 levels. The incident management team is tasked with addressing urgent issues following the crisis. They collaborate with the liaison officers team, responsible for collecting, filtering, and categorizing information. Processed information is then relayed to the senior team, which views the crisis from a strategic perspective and oversees major decision-making and resource allocation among different organizational groups. Collectively, these 3 levels constitute a crisis infrastructure, with their effectiveness dependent on the seamless flow of information. Post-crisis stage. Following a crisis, both the organization and its stakeholders are likely to undergo a mix of positive and negative outcomes. Despite potential losses such as facilities, resources, and human lives, the organization may experience positive changes that contribute to the restoration of social order. Moreover, the management of a crisis shapes the public perception of the company, casting it either as a victim or a villain. If the organization successfully weathers the crisis, it emerges with insights into what strategies worked and what failed, presenting a valuable opportunity to enhance and restructure existing systems. The concept of learning from crisis has been explored in a traditional approach, as learning serves to prepare organizations for future challenges. This learning process is defined by 2 concepts: single and double-loop learning. Single-loop learning involves organizations taking corrective actions to maintain their current goals or activities, while double-loop learning entails questioning the very purpose of those goals or activities. This highlights that learning is not an automatic process, but can be actively pursued to achieve a more profound level of organizational readjustment. This is the end of this segment of our lesson. In the next segment, we will continue discussing crisis management background. This course is presented to you by South Europe College. Thank you for listening, and see you on our next segment.